What a great pleasure it is to be here. First of all, may I introduce Nick, who is a very, very good friend of mine. He is the local rector, yes, and we've known each other for many, many years. Nick will tell you a little bit in a moment, but I have another gentleman here who is a professional photographer, and without me trying to ad-lib as to why he's here, he will tell you himself, but he would like to have your permission to take a photograph of you. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, while you're in this nice smiley mood, Leonora Chilman, or Scots before that, she was one of the Kirby kids. And she actually went over to your country, well, our country, I suppose, your country. Sorry, I've got to be very careful with my history. But anyway, I volunteered as I'm a member of the Royal Photographic Society. We've got a documentary group for East Anglia, and we've got an exhibition in the American Library, also the Maid's Head, early next year to celebrate Slipstream 24. So I'm just involved with two of the, your locations today and Rakif tomorrow. So if there's no objections, I'll just carry on trying to be as private as I can and not say too much about history. I don't understand. But thank you very much. Anyway, look forward to meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
And now for the sermon.
What about the collection?
Yes.
There is a plate at the back. Empty at the moment, full when you leave. All of the people in the party of the coach, apart from Joanne, has one of the original sheets when this memorial was dedicated. So I'm just going to give Joanne one. But for those local people, particularly the Kirby kids who are here, Nick has got copies for you, just to take away. We're not actually going to use them, but it's just a memento of the day. So we'll just do that, and then we'll carry on. Don't go away. None of this is pre-planned. It's purely. None of this is pre-planned. It's all as it happens, right? So it just comes. It will flow naturally off the top of our heads. So first of all, can you put your hand up if you are a Kirby kid?
Oh, my hands up.
Can you put your hand up if you're an American? Then there's me. And of course there's Nick. And then of course we have our own photographer, so if you like to stand up. You know he's official because he's got a badge on. Somehow we're going to just take you back to the 18th of August 1944, when Broad and High was flying very, very low on a single engine, casting a complete dark shadow on the ground below. It came over a house. The pilot did not see who was in the garden. They were children. It was just a summer's day. And as Janet Rush told me, we were only children. She was 6. it went dark. There was an explosion. The older children, I understand, and the people from the house went to the plane. There were 4 dead. The co-pilot very badly hurt his head. One of the ladies took her petticoat off and bandaged his head and saved him. I think he spent about a year in hospital. The pilot was also injured, but more mentally than physically. As I understand it, Colonel Shower took him under his wing and said, "You need to fly." And he took him up as a co-pilot once, twice, I think, and on the 3rd occasion, "Now you take the controls." And he did. And it all came back. And he completed his missions and went home. Sometime post-war, these children, you, put your hands up again, grew up. And the pilot and the co-pilot came back. And you founded your own association, which was in existence until very recently. Until some of you, the pilot and the co-pilot, and some of you folded their wings and went skyward. So, what do we do now? Nick, can I just ask you to just say a little bit about the building and particularly the door? Would you like your pulpit, right?
No, I'm fine. You can see and hear me. This is where I normally stand on a Sunday, and in fact you can see we had our Harvest Festival in here, which is why the church has got so many flowers and produce in it, because we were thanking God for this year's harvest only on Sunday. We still have a service here once a month. If I can just add to Ivan's words, a very warm welcome from me and the church community here at St Andrews. It's very good to have this gathering, and I'm sure a reunion of old friends and the making of new friends as the day goes on. I'm very conscious, of course, of those who are the descendants and relatives of the crew of Broad and High, who we remember, and we are honoured by your presence, your return for some of you to this place. Thank you for being here. This is an ancient church. We're a country with lots of ancient things, and there would have been a church here before the Danes came in the 8th century and gave the village its name. Kirby is a Danish word meaning church town, and so maybe this would have been the church. It would have been built in timber, and then eventually built a stone church, maybe around the time of the Norman Conquest. That's 1066. And one of the oldest things that you can see in this church is the doorway that you came through. I don't know if you noticed the arch, but that's maybe from the 11th or 12th century. And that door, it always amazes me when I push that door open, because the oldest bit of the door is the ironwork, which is 900 years old. And the planks, the timbers, are 800 years old. So you have just operated an 800-year-old door today. So that's maybe a new experience for many of you, but one that I never take for granted when I come in here. And certainly as we look around the church, if you see things that you're puzzled about or interested, do please feel free to ask me questions. I'll just be here while the visit happens. But of course, the main reason for the visit is to see the church, the place where this memorial was unveiled in 1944. And you can see it in context. It takes its place alongside the memorials of this village. And of course, we have the First World War memorial on that side. and flanked by the flags of the Royal British Legion, veterans who used to meet and support one another after the war. And here on this side, next to the American Memorial, is the village memorial, with less names, but their loss dearly felt. And in between is a little memorial for a village called Wicklingham, where the church is so overgrown you can't even see it now. But obviously that village also shared this church as well. And I was very struck by the order of service that we now have. I know some of you have brought it with you. Of the words that we used on that day, because in some ways it reflected what people in this country have been doing since the First World War. We've been remembering our dead with love, but that was extended. That the family of the village was broadened to embrace the American servicemen who come from so far away to defend the freedom that we could not defend ourselves on our own. And so that service and the words that we used and the music all seems to reflect this coming together that happened then, and it's a coming together with powerful resonance as we gather so many years later.
Thank you. Will that be falling over again? Just going to introduce you in a moment to Brian Mahoney, our former president. And he's put together something for you. You do, of course, this will be framed, or a copy of this will be framed, and then I think Nick will have that hanging on the wall. Brian, would you like to come and say what this actually means, and how you've come to put this together? Would you like to stand there, or would you like to come here?
I'll do it from here, and I don't mean to correct you in front of all these people, but it was my father, his squadron commander, who got it back in the air.
Right. We've got it right.
And Roger himself pressed it on me very firmly that whole experience let him go forward with a normal life. Dad actually kind of had him distracted and talking about all sorts of manner, and they'd been in the air for 20 minutes, half hour, with just an engineer and back. And Dad was trying to get him at ease, and they weren't talking about flying. They weren't talking about accidents. They weren't talking about injuries. And at one point, Roger said to me, your father brought me back to attention as he unbuckled himself and stood up out of the left seat and said, Roger, why don't you switch seats with me right now? And he made him do a low pass over Kirby Bedon. And it was at that point that Roger knew he would be able to fly again. So I'm sorry, I had to correct you with that.
I think that is wonderful, because if you hear a story and you repeat it, isn't it great to get it right?
But it's not so great to be corrected in front of so many people. I'll owe you a pint. So what we put together, it's got the, before I read it, let me just quickly pass it around. The photo that it's based on, I found in my father's album just a week ago. And I looked at it. Peter will get a kick out of this as our historian archivist, and he may end up correcting me. But at length I realized that because of who was in that photograph, it had to have been taken between August 10th, when the 788th arrived, the new 788th arrived under my father's command. They had been the 859th of the Hard Luck group, the 492nd, that was stood down on a movement order owing to unsustainable attrition and loss. And Roger was one of the recently arrived co-pilots who my father already had assessed to be a very solid young man and a very good pilot. And he was very proud to have him in his squadron at North Pickenham, and he was among several that were new, several that were old, and a whole lot of others from the other squadrons as they broke the group up This was a big movement order squadron to come to the 467th, which to that point had been missing a squadron. They were a 3-squadron outfit, starting in about, Andy, was it April? Were they? May. The requirement had come down to the 2nd Air Division for a B-24 squadron to be sacrificed to be the cadre squadron for the OSS, who became the CIA, to do spooky stuff, the carpetbaggers. The original carpetbaggers came from the 467th, and they never got a replacement until August 10th. And they received these new people with kind of mixed feelings. They had a lot of bad jaws ahead of them because everybody knew about the horrific losses that they had withstood, and they were really afraid that this bad karma was going to arrive with them. And they really were in a position of having to sort of prove themselves as the new squadron. So it was very ironic that only 8 days later, we had this episode here at Kirby Bedon. And I think part of the weight that was on Roger was knowing that under this crucible where everybody was looking at them, that they had had this episode. And everybody was second guessing other things they could have done. They could have put in at one of the long emergency fields along the coast. And Roger thought, I can make the base, and his calculation wasn't quite right, and we're here today. I just lost track of where I was, the photograph. Is it going around? Because it has a crew member who was replaced when they moved to Rackheath, that photograph must have been taken in that 1 week before the accident. I figured this out recently, and that is a very special photograph. So I wanted that incorporated. It shows them smiling, it shows them, you know, happy of a new start with the bomb group that had the lowest loss rate in the entire 8th Air Force. They went from the worst to the best, and statistically overnight on August 10, they went from having, their attrition rate was reduced to 1/17 of what it had been the day before. That said, I guess I'm through talking. I should probably read the thing, and the rest of you can look at the picture later. But how young they were. The weight of the world on their shoulders, and knowing anything could happen, and this is what happened. In lasting remembrance and gratitude, nearly 80 years ago, out of a summer sky, fell an enemy-destroyed American bomber, mere yards from here, from which the intrepid people of Kirby Bedon pulled the wounded and the dead, thanking the crew and Providence for their near miss of plain children and all others. Since 18 August 1944, beginning with the Leicester crew, the members of the historic 467th Bomb Group, based at Rackheath, and their proud descendants and friends in the 467th Bomb Group Association have felt a strong and lasting bond with the Kirby kids and their neighbors and descendants. Returning today, we want to thank this village for its steadfast honoring and remembering of our shared heroes, and once again welcoming the 467th family.
Let's give Brian a clap. Wow, how do we follow that? Well, Joanne, would you like to? Would you like to say, Joanne is the daughter. I think many of the Kirby kids will know Joanne because you've met before. You might not want to say anything now, you might just want to go across and hug, whatever.
was asked to dedicate the plaque. And we have pictures where my father, the bishop, and Ryan Mahoney's father were here to dedicate the plaque. And I can still remember the years, the day that my father received a phone call in Hanover, Pennsylvania, and there was a little English voice on the other end, and her name is Janet Rush, who's directly beside me here. And she asked, "Are you the pilot that missed my house 50-some years ago?" And he says, "I believe that could be me." And they corresponded, and then we came over to meet. And it was such, I normally am a very introverted person, and yet we walked away thinking that we had a new family when we met these kids. When we first met them, I could picture them coming and they had gifts in their hands. They had parts of the aircraft that they had salvaged. Windshield, the
Walter chimney.
and they gave my father these things with stories behind them. Stories that their parents had come out to help to get my father and his co-pilot out of the plane. And it was just amazing. And I'm so thankful to be here today.
I think we should also just mention the co-pilot. Am I right in saying it was Frank Bales? He was extremely badly hurt, and I think the lady of the house and the older children, they went to the plane, and he was one of the ones they pulled out. But she took her petticoat off and bound his head with it. Is that right? Apron.
She just held it there. She actually thought he died. She just held it there for a long while because the ambulance coming from Raggy thought there was a river crossing here at this end.
Yes.
It wasn't, so they then had to go all the way back to Norwich to come down and get a fish and to come to Kirby. So it was a very long while before they reached the site.
Did she not?
Yes.
Did she not go back and tell her children to pray for that boy because she didn't think that he would make it?
Although she didn't. She actually thought he had died. He left at that point. And the fact that he survived was a miracle.
Indeed it was. I also understand that he probably spent a year in hospital and was eventually flown back to the States. And then I understand that as late as 2015, the French awarded him the French Medal of Honor. And the ambassador, I think, went to his hometown and presented it to him. But his own American medals, I understand, were taken to him when he was in hospital and put on his bed. But he never knew what happened to them. And after he got the French Medal of Honor, the governor of the state went, "Not got your own medals?" And after that, all those years later, he did receive them. That is about as much as I can tell you, all that I know.
I brought a photograph of my grandmother who was taken at the time, and so I thought perhaps to pass it around by the
Please,
way.
please do.
See, pass it across to you. It was taken at the time when
May I come up and say a piece?
You can, because I think, I'm not gonna, I think I know what you would now like to do, and I am aware of it. So you come and tell the next piece of the story.
I think I should say what I keep on bowing, so it'll be all right. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I have here a book which was written by one of our members. It was on the Broaden High when she crashed, and Gerald would very much like this book to go back to America. Now, I don't know anyone more fit to take their book back to America than Joanne and Woody. If they could do this for us, Gerald would be very, very happy. Unfortunately, he's passed on, so the book has been written by him, and it's on the last flight of the Broaden High. And I was one of the people who watched that plane go over just before she came down. And with Janet Rush and myself, I think we are the only two people to see her still in flight before she crashed. Now I would like to ask Joanne to come up and pick this book for me. Oh my darling. This is for all the folk in America to take a read, and there's a piece in the back what I've written up with my last memories of the Broaden High. All right, my darling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is also one other notable person here. I think Gerald's sister is here. Where are you? Gerald's sister?
Straight in front of you, Ivan.
Oh, there you are. This is Gerald's sister, who largely put that together. Thank you. And just because it's going to America, don't think that we don't have a copy, because we do. And you can find it in the new Farm Aviation Museum at Frettingham. And if you don't know where that is, I'm sure one of you will know, and you're welcome to come and read it there.
And I have a copy as well.
And you have a copy as well. So, what more can I say? Why don't you just talk to each other and enjoy it? Thank you.